Many consider my next guest the truly greatest international man, and I would have to agree with that. He's been a mentor to me on so many levels, and I'm thrilled to invite him on my new show here at Stansberry Research. So please welcome to the show Doug Casey. He's the founder of Casey Research. He's considered a leader in speculative investing, and back in the 80s, he wrote a best-selling book, not just in finance, but in the entire nation, called Crisis Investing, that went on to stay at the top of the New York Times bestseller list for close to 40 weeks, which is really unheard of. So Doug Casey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniela. It's always a pleasure to be on a show with you.
Thank you very much. And what interesting times to be speaking, what interesting times to be living in.
Well, I presume that your viewers can see those gray and stormy looking clouds in your background. They're kind of appropriate, I'd say.
They are real clouds. I did not put them there for effect. But yes, let's talk about the gloomy times that perhaps lie ahead. We just wrapped perhaps what is considered one of the most consequential elections in U.S. history. The question is, and I know you just finished a conference on this, is what happens after the election? What is the horizon looking like now? And probably the number one thing we have to discuss is, will we see a peaceful transition of power?
Yeah, well, the answer to the first question is nothing good. And the reason I say that is because the US is truly divided into two groups that actually hate each other on a visceral level. I'm talking about the people that support Trump and the people that voted for Biden. Maybe, I can't believe anybody supports him, but I guess they hate Trump so much that they were willing to vote for Biden. And God forbid Kamala Harris, who's America's answer to Eva Perón from Argentina. So the answer to the question is that this election is as important as the one of Lincoln in 1860, the consequence of which was the war between the states in 1860 that lasted from 1861 to 1865. And it's going to end badly because when you have two groups that disagree on real fundamentals, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's evil, what should we do, what shouldn't we do, and it's visceral, they shouldn't be in the same political entity together. Why? Because one group or the other is going to get control of the state and impose its will on the others and make them very unhappy. And that's where we are right now. And I don't know what the cultural conservatives, which is what Trump is all about. I mean, Trump has no inner compass. He's an opportunist. He knows nothing about economics. His economic policy is basically the same as Biden's. Trump is a cultural conservative. That's why people like him. That's why they support him. He doesn't want to overturn the nature of the US, which is what the Democrats really want to do. I'm talking about from Kamala to AOC and all the rest of them right on down. So yeah, we're on the cusp of a civil war. Best case is a secession where people just split into different political entities.
And I know in past interviews, we've spoken about the possibility of a civil war. And I really thought of you when the news broke that Walmart was temporarily pulling, their handguns and other guns, whatever, off their shelves for fear of, riots breaking out. And I thought, oh no, this is the moment that Doug Casey was speaking about. Now they've since replaced guns on their shelves, but you see this in our imminent future, Doug?
Well, I don't really see any way around it, because what is going to happen when Biden, he'll do pretty much what he promised. Unusual for a politician to do what they promise. They only do bad things that they promise. But what's he going to do? He's going to print money like it's going out of style, trillions more dollars. Well, Trump would have done that too. But he's also going to raise taxes, which people won't like. And he's going to repeal the deregulation movements that Trump has made and add lots of new regulations. So the Greater Depression is going to get worse, number one. But what's going to be the fuse that's going to light the fire? I think it's going to be when he has some lunatic like Beto O'Rourke, who you'll recall was one of the 20 wannabe presidential candidates for the Democrats. When he has somebody like that, probably Beto himself, try to confiscate people's guns or make owning them very, very uncomfortable. At that point, that may be the line in the sand for the people in flyover country. And,
Interesting.
and gun possession is very important because from ancient times, the difference between a slave, and we don't have official slavery anymore, of course, notwithstanding what Black Lives Matter thinks, between a slave and a free man, one of the major differences was the legal ability to be armed, to protect yourself. Slaves and serfs could not be armed. Free men could be armed. In fact, free men were expected to be armed and expected to know how to use their weapons. So if you don't have any means of self-defense, you're in effect a serf. And these idiots think that in a case, for instance, where you suffer a home invasion at 3 a.m, it happens, and there'll be more of this as the standard of living goes down. What are you supposed to do? Call the police and wait 20 minutes or engage in hand-to-hand combat with armed assailants? It's actually crazy. It's morally insane and it's practically insane. But that could be the spark that lights the fuse.
And I spoke about this with Rick Rule, who was my guest earlier today. Doug, I brought up the fact that I was watching the news and they're showing images of cars, thousands of cars in Texas lining up for food banks ahead of the U.S. Thanksgiving here. And, I was saying, look at the huge disconnect between the reality for so many Americans and the U.S. market.
Yeah.
And yes, we know it's a Fed fueled party. We get that, but the disconnect, right, is tremendous. So at one point, something's got to give, right, Doug?
Yeah, it is. I wonder who those people lined up for the food banks are. These weren't grapes of wrath style 1930s era jalopies. These were. I looked at these lines, and they're like the new SUVs.
Oh, well, that is true. Some of them, right.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering what's going on here. But one thing that's going on here is that in the past, people used to save up. I mean, when I was a kid, they used to save up to buy a car, get the money, buy the car. Then we got 2-year financing on cars, 3-year, 4-year, 7-year financing on cars. People can't even afford that anymore, so they lease a car. And even cars, like those expensive cars that those food bank people have, they've gone from being a small but real asset to an immediate and large liability. I mean, it's typical of what's happening in the US, is that people are living above their means because of debt. You can borrow, so why not do it?
And because saving is boring, Doug. Why would I save when I need to, have the latest whatever handbag or expensive car? That's fun, and then I could just get rich on Bitcoin. I think that's the way a lot of people see it.
That's exactly right. But the only way you can actually get rich, unless you get lucky as a speculator, is by producing more than you consume and putting the difference aside in savings.
It's that simple, but people don't get it, right? It's that simple.
I mean, well, why save when I can borrow and borrow at very low interest rates? I mean, let's party. So I think we're living and have been living for some time in a dream world, and we're going to be brought up short, like starting now, actually.
So what would you, okay, so if I'm not borrowing, say if I come to you and say, Doug, I want to buy real estate in New York with, depressed prices right now. Would you advise me to keep renting or to take out a mortgage
Well, you should take out
or
a
move
mortgage.
in with my parents and save?
Well, yeah, those are very good questions. Let's analyze them. If you take out a mortgage on the right piece of property, that mortgage is going to be inflated out of existence in the years to come. That's just about guaranteed because of the trillions and trillions of currency units that are being created. So having a big mortgage at 2 or 3%, at most 4%, that's like a gift. So that's the event. But then you've got to buy in the right market because since the real estate market itself floats on a sea of debt, it could collapse. Interest rates go up. People can no longer afford their adjustable rate markets, and the property hits the market. If you're going to buy something today, I'd say buy in a small town in a state like Wyoming or South Dakota or Utah, one of these flyover states. I think it's way too early to speculate in New York real estate, quite frankly, because the New York government, the city, the state are both bankrupt. So where are they going to get? They can't print money the way the US government does. So they're going to tax the wealthy. That's real estate owners. So I think real estate prices could head down in major cities. So that's how I'd solve the problem.
I knew I should have asked you the question. I'm happy I did.